Intro. Superman, easily, if you've seen any of his films, is in the top 3 superheroes of all time. If you're one of the people who say otherwise, sorry, I gotta question where your morals are clearly. Because they might not be in the right place if your list isn't the definitive list everyone says. Because they're right. That's my list as well. That list being Batman, then Spider-Man, then Superman. Bam. It's as simple as that. But even though this is a Superman movie, and it's the first movie in the new DC cinematic universe, we do have to do a little research on Superman's character and what he is shaped by. It's important that we do this before getting into the story, since the story is pretty blunt in the way it sees how Superman really is and what he stands for, and what he is in like the comics, and keeping that faithful. Superman, as you might have seen in any news that talks about the 2025 movie, is about immigration. I mean, it makes sense. Superman's creators are Jewish immigrants who came to America. Most authors put a version of themselves or part of them into their story, so it just makes logical sense. Also, back in the yay old day, aka when Superman was invented, immigration was different. Superman's whole idea is that he's a child who was kind of brought to the US. Brought isn't really the right word, but he was just brought to the US by his pod and not his parents, so he has to live among the people in the US as Clark Kent. But we all know that stuff is his identity. It doesn't matter now. He's adopted by 2 farmers in the famous state of Kansas, where in some comics he becomes a US citizen through adoption, and sometimes he just lives with them, not being a US citizen. So, one thing we can always note is Superman wasn't born in the US. That's a given. That's the main thing that's consistent about Superman's background, that he's an immigrant to the US, who has been here since he was a baby. But then you get into the question of Krypton not being a recognized US country in the United Nations, and all that. So, it really just leaves a lot in the air. But in the comics, it's sometimes different. Depends on the comics, but they have comics where Superman isn't a citizen, and all these other scenarios really, even like the Russia one. Now that you know the full background, which is just about immigration, so you know a little bit about him and where he came from, we can get into the story of the movie. By the way, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie. We get a lot of 3s in the beginning of this movie. It basically just says how Superman landed on Earth, and now metahumans became a thing. Metahumans, if you didn't know, are just more powerful humans. Pretty easy to remember, just because Meta, like Meta, the social media app, I guess. Whatever. We also learn about the conflict between Baravia and Jarhanpar, in which Superman stopped Baravia from invading Jarhanpar. I'm probably butchering the second name, but it's not a word in Google Docs, so it doesn't matter. Let's cut to now. Now, Superman just lost his first fight, and he's in Antarctica, where his Crystal Forest is, his iconic Crystal Fortress. The Fortress of Solitude, if you're going by the official business name of it, if you're one of those business cards people. He heads there after being dragged by Krypto, who you can guess is his dog, but an ally of Lex Luthor follows him. From TF2, it's the Engineer, that's the official name, which is wild. Superman gets healed because he's in the safe zone, like in Overwatch when you respawn. He's healed by the sun, so remember that. But, just like everyone does when they're in the ER, he listens to a message that was sent to him by his parents. I mean, it was with him, but basically just said, this is what humans would want from you. It's like what he was sent with in this pod. But that's the first half of the message. The message got damaged, so Superman just assumes the rest from his head. Then we return to Metropolis, where Superman gets beat up by the Hammer, or what's on his business card, Ultraman. He gets defeated by Ultraman, but Ultraman then flies away. So Superman goes back to Clark Kent and goes to the news station that he works at. The news station he works at kind of just does whatever gets them clicks or reads, which is the definition of news now. This, you can see this when Lois Lane wants to interview Superman and she gets it. You may already know why. It's because they're dating. They're at the Daily Planet, by the way, that's where they work, which sounds like the Daily Wire, but probably actually a better news source, because the Daily Wire doesn't matter. They get into an argument over Bravia and the ethics of it. Stupid Lois. Ethics don't buy you Porsches. That's not the method you use to win. Then a monster takes over Metropolis, and as Superman gets distracted, Lex and TF2, the engineer, go to the crystal and take over it. Even kidnapping a dog in this movie. No reason to like this guy unless you're the devil or someone evil. They restored the rest of the message that Superman's parents gave to him and leave the base. And also, we get to meet the Justice League in Metropolis. Wrong, actually, the Justice Gang, not League. So the Justice Gang defeats the Kaiju, which is like this monster that's been traveling through Metropolis. And then Superman's message is released to Metropolis. Now everyone's against him because they think he's there just to take them over. Because that's just how it is for news. Superman also tries to get Krypto back, but it ends up having the public hate him even more. He then turns himself in to the US government because of this. He says he loves Lois before this, so he's human, by the way. Important thing to note. Then Superman is brought to a prison where he's trapped with Metamorpho. He basically can just turn his body into different parts or elements. Honestly, just whatever he feels like doing that day, or is told to, because he kind of has to be a subordinate. But today, it's Kryptonite, because Lex is holding his son captive in a cave across from him, so he has to watch. Just to set the scene, they are all in cubes, where they're all trapped in a pocket universe, which sadly isn't a universe in somebody's pocket, but rather a universe that can be traveled to by a portal. This portal is the pocket, really. Lex questions Superman and plays Russian roulette until he answers with somebody that he saved. He doesn't answer, which ends up with the assistant dying, Lex's assistant. Metamorpho gets scared, and this causes Superman to be like, I can save your son. And so Metamorpho helps Superman get out. By turning into the sun, just a normal day. They go and save Joey and essentially kill his captor. Then Lois tells the Justice Gang they need to help Superman. For a reminder, the Justice Gang is Mr. Terrific, Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl, our star-studded cast. Out of the Shark Tank team, Mr. Terrific is the only person who wants to do anything, so he and Lois go and rescue Superman. They take Mr. Terrific's ship there and then enter the pocket universe. They save Superman and Metamorpho from the portal and then head back to the iconic state of Kansas, where everything happens but nobody lives in. They see Superman's parents as he needs motivation because of the public outrage on him. They tell him that the actions he does represent who he is more than what his parents wanted him to be. So where people's judgment should lie. It makes sense, considering he never tried to take over humanity and all that for the entire time he was there. Then Eve, who is Lex's assistant and girlfriend, that's an HR violation, but she helps Jimmy from the Daily Planet out. Jimmy's a photographer. She sends him photos that incriminate Lex for helping out Bravia trying to get some land from the Jahunpar territory. She gets thrown into the pocket Alcatraz, but the portal also opens tenfold in Metropolis, really. Anything to get Superman back there, because he needs to be there. He really does. The city is splitting in half, but also Baravia's invading Jahunpar. So Superman goes after Lex while the Justice Gang stops Baravia. Yay. Superman and Mr. Terrific defeat the TF2 villain and have to deal with Ultraman. After being trapped underground, Superman learns Ultraman is a clone of himself, so he has to fight him. They kind of fight for a while in the little tear in Metropolis. With the help of the lovable dog, Krypto, they defeat Ultraman. Yay, another villain gone. So, he just kind of gets pulled into that like little tear, that black hole into the rift, so he's probably gone for a long time, if not eternity. Then, Mr. Terrific closes the portal, and then Lex admits to all his crimes at his headquarters. This includes giving a bunch of weapons to Bravia so that they could invade Jahanpur. He also says he's mad at Superman because he's an alien and that the people have accepted him. Grr, I can't have that. That's not fair. No. Why do ethics matter? But luckily for us, Krypto pins Lex down, but after all of this, Lex's stuff is released to the public. So, justice served, I guess. Superman has a clean record now, or close to it, and frees everyone in the Pocket Universe. But the movie ends with Supergirl coming to pick up Krypto from Superman while he's in the fortress healing, or looking over memories. And so that's how the movie ends. He looks over memories with his new parents on Earth and not his old parents. End of movie. There's post-credit scenes, but there's so little they don't really matter to the story. So that's the end of the Superman story. After seeing the movie, you can notice one thing that is brought up a lot in it. The idea of the human race. The human race is the thing that connects a lot of people to each other in a non-physical way, really essentially. It's not like a road or anything type of physical connection, but we all know we're humans. Some people don't, but that's because of psychological problems. But the main idea is how we're supposed to be kind to each other. That's what the director of the movie said the movie's about. It's also about other things like immigration and the conflict in the Middle East right now, but those fall under the umbrella of just being kind to each other in this category. When we're all kind to each other and actually just realize that people are different, we can actually get stuff done to help the world and each other. That's what happens in Superman, but because Superman in the Big 25 represents somebody who comes from somewhere else that wants to help the world, people are against it. The idea is that he thinks his point on Earth is to help people. That's why he's in shock when the second half of the message comes out in the movie, because he didn't know that's what he was supposed to do, since he just he really immediately assumed he was sent here for positive intent. So it really is what you do versus who you are. A lesson always taught in school, I'm guessing. I don't know how schools are now. But it is just the lesson of actions matter more than words. If it's not taught in schools, it's a pretty common message. But it still holds meaning. It's still true because we look at actions taken by people rather than by the words they say. But now it's more of we should just judge people based on their actions rather than who they are on the outside and things they can't control about their appearance, for example. Because they cannot control the outside, but they can control what they'll do and who they are on the inside. But division is something that some people have been raised in, so they're used to it and think it's right. But it's really about changing a mindset to see others by certain qualities over others. In Superman, we base Superman on his actions and not what he looks like and all that other stuff. We know he's a good guy because he's always stood for hope and a beacon of it. He's always stood for the hope of humanity, which is something good that we can all agree on and we can all look forward to. We all want humanity to go into the right direction, and we all hopefully care for one another. No matter where a person comes from, because they can't really control that since, I doubt anyone had a selection screen before they were born. If you did, congrats, you're not human. It's all really about how you view people and what you base them on. Because there's a lot of qualities you can't control, having, and a lot that you can. And the ones that you can choose how you act and how you do certain things is how you should judge a person on and what you should be judged on. That's the main thing that matters. And the movie does a good job while showing that idea of kindness and what people should do and like how they should view people. In the movie, there's a conflict between Baravia and Jahanpur, which is basically all but in name similar to Israel and Palestine in our real world. In the movie, Superman stops Baravia from invading Jahanpur, and people get mad at him because Baravia is an ally to the US, which also means not caring about corruption going on. I mean, like, you could put that label on anything. Because the movie depicts a corrupt government that wants to essentially commit a mass killing of people of another kind. I'm not using the big G word, but you get the idea. It's an idea built in hate and by stuff like that, what was mentioned before, by things people can't control. People can't control being born in this country, and so why should their life be shortened for it? It's not really an ethical debate, because if you go against it, you're really just saying that people's lives should be shorter for no good reason. Even kids, you're kind of just saying that. Nothing they can do about it, which is just a hierarchical system, like on a hierarchy. Not really something we should live under, but that's a different conversation for a different day. The conversation now is really about civilizations and civilians of any country. It's also about the fact that in the movie, Jahanpur shows multiple children and innocent people being attacked. That's part of the big G word, as mentioned before, which is what Baravia wants to do. Children, by the way, are civilians due to the fact that they are children, and I don't think you can really say otherwise. I don't think anybody supports the killing of them. If you do, I think you might have to rethink what your mindset is, because that's pretty, like, weird. And there's a lot of questions on why you would, and you might want to change that. But the movie's way of depicting Jahanpur is pretty good, I would say, because it shows in blatant terms, not like you have to figure it out on your own. It shows in direct terms why Baravia is a villain, essentially, even though they're a US ally, which for some people is enough to be a good guy. But you need to look, like, further. That's why research is kind of necessary on a lot of things while going deeper into a subject like this. Because you could see a lot of stuff like they're a US ally, and what's actually happening is the bad stuff that's happening is being swept under the rug. Like nothing is happening. You can tell a story, but not tell it about everything that's happening in the story. It's really just called narrative manipulation. Providing part of a story and not the full thing provides people with a good idea, a good enough idea, really, of what it is, but you can remove stuff that makes someone else look good. Like, if you were to say, oh, I had a really bad day, but you got $1 million, but you left at that part. That's an extreme example, but, like, imagine that. You can do that. That's narrative manipulation. Until they start doing things you have to comment on, even if they're bad, in Baravia's case. Then you have narrative manipulation. That didn't work because you can't manipulate a narrative too much. There's like a line. There's a fine line between how much you can manipulate it. Too little and too much. Not really too little, because it's just always too much on either side. But you may be wondering what Superman in the Big 25 has to do with Israel-Palestine, as mentioned before. It's just simple. Baravia is Israel wanting to take out every Jahanpur citizen, and Jahanpur is Palestine. It's a blunt comparison, but it makes sense. It gets the message across. Innocent people are dying, and their death is just being funded more and more. That's the idea that the movie really presents. The movie, in that sense, is just to remind people that kindness is something that is everywhere and should be spread further. It isn't weak or anything to show kindness to others, because that's what humans are supposed to do. To show kindness to one another and look out for one another. Superman made some money in the box office. It's still going, so I'll predict it may make around $750 million at the end of its run. Because right now, at the time of recording, it has like $503 million. But that's just my prediction. Your free will lets you have one as well. But the reviews seem to be positive, of the movie. On IMDb, it has a 7.6 out of 10, which means it's pretty good. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has about an 83%, which also puts it at good. On Facebook, it has a 5 out of 5, but I don't think I need to tell you for you to know that that's a good movie or not, because you can assume. But on Letterboxd, it has a 4.0 out of 5, which also means it's good. It's like IMDb, where if it's around a 4 out of 5 or an 8 out of 10 or a 7.5 to an 8 out of 10, that pretty much means it's like a respected and good movie, and you should probably watch it, since people will tell you to watch it eventually if they really like films and all that. It's just one of those things you have to get around to. Marketing for the movie was pretty good, but a lot of people I knew were excited for the film before it was coming out. It was marketed less of a DC Universe starter movie and rather a Superman movie, which more people could get behind. It's easier to market a movie like this as a solo movie rather than the start of some new universe, which makes sense because that means commitment. People knew it was part of a new DC universe, but it really didn't matter because it was the first one of it. But people won't commit to something like that because Marvel tried that and they kind of just give up over time. But it also seems like the movie did well in the box office, as its numbers are around pretty good. They said marketing was $200 million, which is insane. That's an inflated number, but it's probably made that back. The political climate around this movie as well, so is the one that mainly put things across. That's one of the other things that was controversial we can use about the movie. It's mainly due to things like political division and some news stations giving into that division and calling the movie woke or whatever. A lot of people called the movie super woke because of how James Gunn said that Superman is a story about America and how Superman is an immigrant. I mean, there's no denying that Superman is all that, because it's kind of the point of the series. If you read it, you would know. But some people don't really care about stuff like that, I guess. Don't do history research if you can color over the lines, because you're not going to have a good view of it if you're just going to manipulate it to be what you want. That's the problem of the real issue is then a faulty immigration system. But don't fix the problem, just change the solution if you want to seem more calmer, and then never have a solution because nothing is ever fixed. That's a different conversation, but we can talk about how the movie has gone against some people's perspectives on things. I guess I don't care about the kindness message. You don't need to be, quote, woke to like the movie, in my opinion. People like Ben Shapiro didn't like the movie, so that means it's probably a good movie, since that was the same logic as Barbie. Him and Charlie Cook said Barbie was bad, and it ended up being really good. They really tell you how a movie is by using reverse logic on what they think. Just take whatever they say, reverse it, and then you got what your opinion may be, if you're not agreeing with them on a lot of stuff. The music of the movie is pretty good. You hear it as a primary focus in the movie, but it uses a lot of motifs and such throughout the movie. They're just made a little more modern with some new instruments. It's basically a one-to-one recreation of some of the old songs because they want to keep it faithful to the Superman series. That's really how you do a remake. You have nods to the previous stuff, but then you use it in a new story. You don't have to have everything go back to the previous one for references and all that. It doesn't matter. It's better to have a new thing and just add on Easter eggs like that. And the music is pretty good because of that factor, and also how it adds to the experience of the movie and the intensity of it. I personally saw the movie in IMAX, so everything is bass boosted there. I don't know if you've ever been to an IMAX theater or not, and you're pulled into the movie. It's a good experience to hear the music and all of that with all the bass and the sound of an IMAX theater, since it's so big and the speakers are so loud. Of course, now it's not an IMAX anymore, so can't really have that experience, but it's still worth a shot to try to recreate the feeling of it if you have like a speaker in your house or anything. I don't know how your setup is, but you could always try. The music also is somewhat made up of like copyrighted songs. It's a James Gunn movie, so they're just used as either like jokes or something to set up another scene. But overall, the soundtrack is pretty good, assuming it is all over the place, really, from time periods. Not really anything specific, but it's not like the Bike Riders where it's from like the 60s and 70s because it has to be that accurate. It's just all over the place. It's just whatever fit the mood of the scene, I guess. But I would recommend listening to it if you ever get the time and you haven't heard some of the songs somehow that are in it. Overall, the big 25 is a pretty big year for superhero movies. Marvel ending Phase 5 and a new DC cinematic universe. It's not really going to slow down if this is the type of quality we're going to get from both Marvel and DC, because Thunderbolts was pretty good and I've heard Fantastic Four is good. So hopefully they continue producing these types of movies, because this and Thunderbolts have been really good so far. Hopefully these DC movies are better than the original DC Universe movies, like DC Cinematic Universe, like the Snyderverse. Hopefully they're better. I beg. But that's really it. If you want to form your own opinion, then watch the movie. But I would personally give it a 9.7 out of 10. So if you disagree, well, I guess you can disagree. That's free speech. Which is a high score for the movie. I'd give it a high score, but I would personally put it above Fight Club and below Interstellar on my list. But that's my opinion. As I said before, watch the movie to form your own, because you have free speech as well. That's it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Pretty please.